this is working. Well. Very cool. So in the chat so far, we've got Steph MBLK190, right? I'm just going to call you K190. And we've got Vanderbricks. Welcome to the stream, everyone. I'm sure we'll get more people throughout the evening. Let's move that over there. Yeah, so trialing a new sort of setup. Hope you like it. Maybe if I move over here, that's a little bit better. Yeah, so tonight's going to be stories from 10 years of camping. Now, I went camping for the first time more than 10 years ago. Went as a kid, but I guess 10 years ago was about the stage where I started going camping semi-regularly. So, yeah, just thought I'd share my stories from all the funny times that I've had since. Yeah, so g'day Evan, Stephen, and Vanderbricks. Yes, you've noticed the crossing lamp. Little, what do you call it? Reference to anyone who has seen Fogarty Avenue's video of Les, how he made that for me. So it's pretty cool, and yeah. So I guess I'll first start by talking about how I was first introduced to camping as a little kid. You know, my experiences camping as a little kid. My parents were not big campers, but they weren't against camping. They just never got around to doing it. So, yeah, I remember going camping a couple times when I was very young. My first camping spot was probably the Haucra River up in the Alpines. I went there when I was, I don't know, probably 5 or 6, something like that. That was a good little trip. I believe our car, the engine, well, it didn't overheat, but it almost overheated, and so we had to sort of cruise downhill until we could get into a town which would, be able to have a look at it. But yeah, we owned a couple of tents. We owned one tent which was maybe a two or three person tent. I don't know how big. And then we owned a massive 7-person tent. You know, one of those things that you buy as young parents who are setting up a family, and you think, oh, we're going to go camping. We'll get this big tent to house the whole family, and we used it actually camping maybe 2-3 times. I don't know. Not much, put it that way. And the other one, I think we used it a couple times. I think Dad had it before having kids and all that. But yeah, it could, to be completely honest, the tents got used more often as backyard camping. I did a fair bit of backyard camping as a kid. Used to love that. You got all the creature comforts of a house, but you get the experience of sleeping in the tent. So yeah, that was fun. I remember, bringing all kinds of snacks into the tent and having sleepovers with friends in the tent. Although we lived in a reasonably small house at the time, and with a pretty small backyard, So the 7-person tent especially took up the entire backyard. So yeah, it didn't get brought out too often because of that reason, taking up so much space. The 2-3-man tent took up a bit less space, and so that was used more often. But yeah, a few backyard camping sessions with friends, that's sort of where the spirit of the adventure, sort of the seed for the will of adventure, I don't know what I'm saying, it made me want to, explore more, planted the seed to want to go and explore more and camp in places other than your backyard. Not that there's anything wrong with camping in your backyard, but you get what I mean. So, looking at some comments, Victorian Rail Heritage says, I have 2 of those gate lights actually. Very nice. But does it illuminate like my one back there? I don't know. K190 says, I've only been camping once and it was for a school trip, and 3 days hiking. As fat as I am, I'm surprised I survived. Well, yeah, I'll talk a bit later about my school camping trips. And, my good friend Les, he used to be quite obese. I'm not sure exactly how much he weighed at his peak. I want to say 110, 120, something like that. And he's lost a lot of weight now, as you would have seen in his videos, down to, 70 odd kilos, 60, 70 kilos. I don't actually know. But yeah, Les has done a lot of, where I was going with this was Les has done a lot of hiking and stuff when he was pretty fat. So just because you're fat doesn't mean you can't get out there. But of course, losing weight is ultimately the best thing, but each to their own. Vanderbrick says, only been a few times when I was very, very young. So don't know if I enjoyed it or not. Well, you don't necessarily need a tent to go camping, or not a fancy tent at that. If you've got like a station wagon like I've got, I quite often camp and just sleep in the back of that. If you don't have such a roomy car, then just buy, if you want to have a try out of camping, I'd suggest just buying a cheap basic tent, going somewhere relatively close and, researching what facilities the spot has before you go. Maybe even book yourself into a caravan park, unpowered site. Gives you a bit of a taste without being too far away from the amenities. And yeah, see how you like it. Evan says, I've only ever done school camps in year 5, 6, 7, 10 and 11. Ooh, a few years missing in between 7 and 10. Braxton, I'm very good, thank you. Kelvin says, I just need to get out more and do more stuff away from home. I feel the same. Earlier this year I made a sort of, goal to try and get out for at least one night, at least once a month. And I'm sad to say that I've already failed on my goal, but I try. Just, getting out as often as you can, using the gear that you've got. I'm all for that. Oh, Stephen. Stephen is just Stephen. Okay, I know who you are now. So, I guess my first real story comes from a school camp year 7 school camp. Prior to year 7, I'd been on school camps, but they're always, in cabins and that sort of thing. And while I loved them, you were in cabins, So, yeah. Although we went to some country destinations, Ballarat, Emerald, those are the two places that come to mind. And you did some outdoorsy activities while you were there at the camp, but ultimately you went back to sleep in a bunk bed. So, yeah, still a bit cushy. Not that there's anything wrong with being cushy, but yeah, it's the balance between getting out there and luxuries, You can have both, but it's expensive when you have both in the end. Anyway, yeah, year 7 was the first time which I got a taste of the outdoors, I guess. So when I was... The year 7 camp was... so I went to St Leonard's College, although the Cornish campus... I'll spare you the details of the two schools, what are now 2 schools, but were originally 1 and blah. Anyway, St Leonard's used to have 3 campuses. They had the Brighton campus, the Cornish campus, and the... what do you call it? Ibis campus, which was a camp. A school-owned camp. Now, it was not a traditional, bush camp type thing, but it had tents, so that's a start. At Camp Ibis, which was owned by St Leonard's, they had like a row of tents, right? Permanently set up. And the tents had enough space for 2 people plus gear or 3 people without their gear. So the school set us up so that there was normally 2 people to a tent plus their gear. And this is year 7 camp, so many people were bringing entire suitcases full just for a few days away. But because there was an uneven number of kids, one group had to be a 3. It was gender segregated, but of the boys, there was an odd number of us, and so I got placed into the group of 3 with my good mate Les. We didn't know each other that well back then because, hey, that's how we met, year 7 at school. And our other good friend, which we are still good friends with today, Harrison. So the 3 of us were in the one tent, and as compensation, if you like, for 3 of us in the one tent, we had a separate tent to put all of our gear in so that it wasn't too cramped in there. And that seemed to work well. So 3 of us, we were reasonably good friends already. So there was going to be no issues with getting along. And, getting to know each other is part of the fun of school camps. Especially when this one was, March. So school has only been on, you're only with your fresh new cohort for about a month. So, yeah, we got placed into this tent with, Les and myself got placed into a tent with Harrison. And everything was great. We got off to sleep just fine. And then middle of the night, maybe 2, 3 a.m., something like that, Les and I both woke up to Harrison snoring very loudly. Now, Harrison has since learnt that he has a form of sleep apnea, so don't blame him. But yeah, it was very loud. And Les and I, at one point, we somehow sort of realised that we were both awake and couldn't get back to sleep. And so we figured out a plan, and that was going to be, let's move to the other tent and shift some of the gear back into the tent that we're currently in, where Harrison is still sleeping quite solidly. That way we can get away from Harrison and his snoring and get a good night's sleep. So that's what we did. In the middle of the night, we shifted gear around and got beds and stuff set up in the new tent and got a decent rest of the night's sleep. So then in the morning, we woke up, and so did Harrison. And Harrison said to us, "Oh, where did you guys go last night?" And we explained, well, we had a pretty bad sleep. We woke up to you snoring. And he said, "Oh, I slept like a baby." So Harrison wasn't too concerned at all, and we kept that sleeping arrangement for the rest of the camp. I can't remember exactly what the teachers thought, but they were happy enough with it in the end. There was no complaints from anyone. Looking at some comments. Looks like Albert has joined. Brashton says, "I go hiking with my mates from where I grew up every year." Very nice. Albert said, went in summer camping near Mount Kosciuszko. Still froze. Tried to warm up in someone's car and learnt the heating for the aircon of a car comes from the engine seat and doesn't work with the engine off. Yeah, that's quite a way to discover things, and you make a good point. That's one of my biggest things when camping. I have to be warm. I don't mind necessarily going in colder months so long as I am warm. I hate being cold. Cold and wet is my worst combination. I will be miserable if I'm cold and wet while camping. Just make sure that you pack warm enough clothes and sleeping bags and that sort of thing. Vanderbrick says, "I feel I'd enjoy it. Maybe camp somewhere with some abandoned railway stuff set up in a GY at Trentham." Yeah, I've never actually thought of doing that, sleeping in the middle of a freight wagon, a static freight wagon like that. You absolutely could do it. I've slept in a sleeping carriage before, but that's on an actual bed. Braxton said, "We did 40 Ks in Portland last time. That's not a bad distance at all." K190 says, "The only fun thing I've done so far was going on the Why Not Try Again tour. That went well, lol." Yes, I was also on that tour, and yeah, bit of a disaster, but hey, we all had fun. We did Puffing Billy on one of the school camps. Definitely the highlight. Yeah. Oh, so Stephen has changed his name midstream. And yeah, okay, it's less confusing. I went to New Zealand in year 10 and Central Australia in year 11. Both were fun times and plenty of stupidity from some students. Yeah. I'll tell the story a bit later in the stream about a hike that went horribly wrong. Wasn't my group, thankfully, but another group. And yeah. I mean, I don't know if you call that the story of stupidity, but you'll see. Mike Tube says, oh, it's Michael. Okay. I have fond memories from my Form 5 Central Australia trip in 1976. We even camped at Ayers Rock and got to climb it too. That was certainly a very intense experience. Yeah, that would be interesting. Aussie Kelpie says, to keep warm, a makeshift hot water bottle can be made with some hot hands things and a beanie. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, okay. So, continuing on with the theme of school camps, I'd say year 8 was the first. I can't remember if it was late year 7 or early year 8 or what. I get a bit confused. You know, this is all 10 years ago, so give me a break. But my first school camping experience, which was a hike, a proper hike. I think this must have been early year 8, and I think it was to the Grampians. And although I believe we stayed in some sort of accommodation for a couple of nights maybe, we definitely did some hiking, and yeah, got to sleep in actual tents, carry big hiking packs. Yeah, the first taste of hiking for me. That was pretty fun. I don't remember anything particularly eventful happening on the year 8 camps, but yeah, it was just giving me an introduction to things to come. Year 9, I shifted schools from the Cornish College, what was now Cornish College, to St Leonard's Brighton campus, and yeah, I did some hiking trips there. I think the year 9 hike was to the Alpines, I believe. I went to the Alpines one year and the Otways another year, and I can't remember which came first. Maybe it was the Otways. Anyway, this is a story from the Alpine camp, and I can't remember what year it was, but it doesn't really matter in the end. So the hike went fairly well. You know, we was all going as planned. We had some resources dropped off to us at certain points. We were following a hiking trail. What part of the Alpines were we at? I forget. I'd have to look at a map. And I wasn't particularly great with directions back then, so that didn't make things any easier. But yeah, I remember things like we came across a group of students from the Timbertop school, and you know, they're big into hiking and made out like, oh, you know, we're so much better than you because of hiking, and you know, us St Leonard's kids are like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, found some geocaches, if you know what they are. Yeah, just by accident, we weren't searching for them. Climbed the summit of one of the peaks in the area. All fun stuff. Now, the real story begins on what was to be either the last or the second last day. I think it was, it was on the eve of the second last day, that's right. We had gotten word that there was a severe weather warning coming through for the area the next day, that there would be pretty high winds and potentially some storms. Now, the school obviously didn't want to risk having lots of private school kids out on the mountains in a severe weather event, and not that sort of thing would be particularly fun either. And we weren't prepared anyway. So different group. We were the teachers and the hike leaders, spoke to each other, and it was determined that, okay, we are going to be walking tomorrow to a pickup point where the bus will come and pick up the kids, and keep in mind where there's a bunch of different groups, right? There's sort of a circular sort of path, and we all get to walk the whole circular. In theory, we all would get to walk the whole circular path, but we'd all start at different points along the journey. So different groups were in different places, and coordinating pickups and stuff was a bit of a logistical nightmare, considering, this was an early pickup. But that's what we needed to do. We needed to get to a rendezvous point. The bus would come pick us up. Now, the particular group that I was in, we were all, and this makes me think that we must have been in year 10, we were all reasonably competent hikers, and we decided that we were going to choose to get up early and walk a bit of a ridge on top of the mountain, and that would get us plenty of time to get back down to where the pickup point was. But we would get to experience we were going to set off before dawn, and so experience, walking at dawn, seeing the sunrise over the peak and over the ridge, should I say. And that was really mesmerising. I loved that. I'm not usually an early riser, but some things are worth getting up for on the rare occasion, and that was one of them. I remember walking atop the ridge and feeling the wind was already picking up and, accelerating over the ridge. It was all quite exciting, and you know what? Let me see if I can actually pull up some photos from that trip. Because if I can, that would be cool, because I know I've got some. A10 hike. I've got a few photos here, but it's worth showing. Okay, give me a sec and I'll bring up my computer screen. Ta-da! New thing. Looks like our alternator belt failed. Didn't remember that. A few bones, a few creaks, some photos of the various people which came along, and there's a mountaintop. Just some of the things, and that was one of our camps. I believe this was the ridge that we climbed across on the last day before being picked up. Obviously I didn't take too many photos of the day, but a few lizards. Okay, not spectacular photos, but nice to sort of see, I guess. So while that was very successful for my group, another group chose a slightly different method. They chose to instead just try and get to the drop-off point at a normal time, but the students were leading the navigation, in all groups, they were leading the navigation. But let's just say some groups were better at navigating than others, because this group took a wrong turn and they got very far away from where they were supposed to be before the hike leader, who obviously knew where they were going and that they were going the wrong way, had to step in and say, okay, this is now a matter of safety. We've got to get the kids back to a main road so that the bus can come pick them up. And so they had to walk through farmers' fields and stuff, and they had to climb over barbed wire and electrical fences, all kinds of stuff like that. One guy even, and block your ears if you're squeamish, punctured his ball sack with the barbed wire fence. Not fun at all. But yeah, they had to bush bash a bit, and I remember being at the caravan park, which we were all transported to, and seeing this group finally arrive at the end of the day when they were supposed to be there in the morning, and they were all scratched up and bruised, and they looked like they'd just fought a battle, and quite honestly they almost had. Battle with nature, that is. And yeah, that was the story of the hike which went wrong. Yeah, so reading some more comments. Albert said, going to Central Australia in Year 11/Form 5 must be a Victorian schools thing. So many seem to do it. Doesn't happen here in New South Wales. Yeah, my school never had a Central Australia trip, or at least I think they had the option of one in Year 9, but not enough people chose it, and so everyone went overseas instead. But I'll talk about my overseas trip in schools another time. That wasn't camping. K190 says, I'd love to walk the old Portland Cement branch as a start, or the alignment from Geelong to Drysdale. Maybe a bit of tenting as well. Yeah, both achievable. Brian says, G'day, it's not the quality of the photos, it's the quality of the memories that is important. Absolutely. Yeah, yikes, Vanderbricks. And Christ on a bike, says Stephen. K19 says, that's effed. Yeah. I think all the men in the chat tonight can relate as to what a terrible experience that must be. Yeah. I think Year 10 was the last of my school hiking trips, because by Year 11 the school is like, focus on your VCE, and so I don't think I did any hikes between Year 11 and 12. Although, let me just, if I can just check my photos. I could be wrong there, but no, it doesn't look like it. Yeah, so took a bit of a break after that. Although I had amassed a small little collection of camping gear by that point. A good hiking mat, a decent sleeping bag, a nice little gas stove. Important bits and pieces like that. Nothing too extravagant, but yeah, enough. Now, my first camping trip that I did organised with friends, or I should say my first real I was going to say it was the Malord hike. And was it the Malord hike? I think it was. I get confused as to which hike was what. Yeah, it was the Malord hike. That was my first hiking trip / camping trip organised by myself and friends outside of school. So that was in April of 2016, I think. Let me see if I can pull up the photos of that. Because that was I'm sure you've seen, a lot of you will have seen the Fogarty Avenue video. Where is it? Oh, it's in this folder, isn't it? Lord hike, here we go. Here we go. Let me just give me a minute while I sort things out. Yeah, in fact, we'll just go like this. Okay. So, oops, be back here. Yeah. Balan Station. Just wanted to show that because now Balan Station looks a little bit different. It's got a second platform. I don't think the goods shed is there anymore. Yeah, nice little station, Balan. But continuing down, maybe if we limit it, my computer's working overtime, but let's go like that. That's better. It's a photo of James, one of the hike participants. Yeah, you can sort of see yeah, different photos of us hiking. Has some quite cool campsites. I liked this one. That was one of my favourite. Although it's not an extravagant campsite, you can see, you know, we're on top of a hill and yeah, just sort of setting up camp just on the side of the railway line. I love utilitarian camps like that. You know, there's nothing fancy. You're not necessarily camping there because it's great scenery or it's a great camping spot. You're just camping there because it's the best spot to settle down for the night on a multi-day hiking trip. Fond memories. That's a view from the top of the hill. Inside the tent. Sort of more of the area. Crossing the bridge, helping out that poor kangaroo that was euthanised. And Newstead where we ended. And you can just see a couple of, if I quickly go through, there's some silly photos. Yeah, so yeah, very fond memories, the Malort hike. I think it was originally planned to be 50 Ks, although we crapped out at about the 30 K mark, something like that. Yeah, but it was fun. And for that hike, I purchased a 3-man tent, and I think a couple of other camping bits, but the 3-man tent was the main thing. because I obviously needed a tent to go camping in, and our poor old little 2-man and was too small, and our 7-man was too big. So I got myself a decent quality 3-man tent that it wasn't your ultimate lightweight tent, but because I knew that I was sort of going to be using it for a hybrid of hiking and other uses, I didn't want it to be ultra lightweight. I wanted a little bit more space, put it that way, so that there was enough space for 3 of us and our gear. I've still got that tent today. There's a couple of little bits that are broken on it that need some fixing, but it's still holding up for the most part. And it's 5 years later, so pretty good. Hope it lasts me another 5, 10, 15 years. I don't know. So Les has documented the whole Malort hike on his YouTube channel, Fogarty Avenue, and South Gippsland as well, which was the next one. We had some great campsites on South Gippsland hike, and I won't go through the photos because, in the interest of time, we've been going for 45 minutes now, and I'm still not even halfway through my camping stories. So to speed it up a bit. I remember lots of things that stood out from camping in South Gippsland. I think my favourite camp spot was probably underneath the Trestle Bridge in Lang Lang. That would have been hard to beat. And even just staying in Currumborough and, all the encounters with random people that we had in Currumborough, great memories. And I guess, if you're ever thinking about doing something like that yourself with a few friends, highly recommend it. I haven't actually done any multi-day hikes since South Gippsland, I don't think. Yeah, that's sad, but I've been caught up with uni, and so were the rest of my friends or work. We keep, thinking to each other, oh yeah, we should organise one, and then it never happens. So I actually do hope to do one at the end of the year in Rubicon. There's actually some significant planning that has already been done for it, so I'm confident it will happen. And now that I've finished the Rails to Rubicon book, it should be a good trip. We'll be just hiking the SEC lines up there in Rubicon. We won't be doing any of the timber tramways, or we'll be doing a couple of sections of them, but only because that's the best path to take, going between sections. But you'll see about that at the time. And so, I haven't done any hiking type camping. I've certainly done plenty of camping, just more using the car. And that's something that I guess significantly changed between the Malort hike and further on. I got my licence, and so having a station wagon Subaru Outback, it's a great car to go camping in, and I've been camping with Les in his van a few times. So yeah, life gets in the way, doesn't it, K190? Will I be recording at Vanderbricks? Yes, of course. I don't have a book coming out, no, Brian. Rails to Rubicon is... what I meant by I'd finished it was I'd finished reading it. It took me like a year to read this book, but it's an excellent book. You just Google Rails to Rubicon or look up the LRRSA website, and yeah. I hope to write a book one day of something railway related, maybe light railway related, but that's way down the track. Yeah. I think my most memorable long multi-day car camping trip was with Les in 2018. We called it the trip, Urbex road trip. And that was to western and northwestern Victoria. We spent 2 weeks doing pretty much nothing but exploring abandoned buildings and stuff. It was excellent. And we had some pretty cool campsites and pretty cool stories. Jay, g'day Jay. Haven't seen you in a while. Nice signs. Your lifting looks like Sixth Sense lighting. Oh, yeah, okay. Good movie, Sixth Sense. So, yeah, boy, were there some... Well, okay, I guess I should set the scene of this Urbex trip. We had planned things meticulously, and by meticulously I mean like short of down to the minute, like down to the half hour. We had planned this trip. I wish I was joking, but that's what we did, and it was a lot of work, and we quickly discovered that even though we thought we'd built in, safety margins in terms of the time and whatnot, the times went out of the window very quickly. But what sucked was, we sort of had to, because everything was so rigidly planned, we had to finish the day's tasks, if you like, no matter what. So, if we said we were going to explore 5 different places, we were exploring 5 different places. Even if we finished quite late. This was in January, so daylight savings and was, in its peak. So didn't get dark till 8:39. So that definitely helped us. But, oh boy. Les and I both agree after that we need to change our trip planning to be not so rigid. But yeah, so the context is that we would often finish quite late, and although we had planned a lot of our camping spots, a lot of them we didn't really know. We were just sort of like, we'll find something, we'll do something. And having a car, you can sort of get away with that. I wouldn't so much recommend it on foot, but I mean, even so, depending on where you go, you can do it. But yeah, some of our late night stories include, where should I start? I think the most memorable one from that trip was what is now referred to by Les and I as the ill-fated spaghetti. I laugh because it truly was ill-fated. So, where was this? I think it was Hopeton. Yeah, it was Hopeton. I'm going to call it Hopeton even if it wasn't. I forget exactly where it was, but I'm pretty sure it's Hopeton. Anyway, so we'd finished quite late. I think we'd gotten into camp. It was either dark or it was like... No, yeah, that's right. It wasn't dark, but it was sunset when we got to camp. And it's a beautiful campsite beside the lake. But, this is sunset at, 8:30 p.m. at night. And we still are yet to unpack everything, yet to set up camp, yet to even think about start cooking dinner. And so, yeah, we get the car unpacked and set up camp and everything. By this point, it's, about 9 p.m. It's really starting to get dark. I start on dinner. Our first problem was that the gas stove that we had, which was Les's dad's, I believe, wasn't really running well, and so the water was taking ages to boil. And that was just the first of our troubles. Then the wind was picking up, so, it doesn't help a little camping gas stove that doesn't cope very well to begin with the wind. So everything's taking like twice as long as it should, because we're getting so little heat into our food. And then Les's dad insisted that we take along this gas-fired lamp. We had a couple of LED lamps and stuff, electric lamps, and we sort of said to him when we were packing, like, this really isn't necessary, but he insisted that we took it and use it. So we were like, oh, okay. But it was getting windy, and so we packed all of our stuff into like these storage tubs, right? And so I'd gotten the lid of one and sort of trying to prop it up to try and form a bit of a wind block to the stove and the gas lamp, and the wind's picking up, and at one point a big gust of wind blew over the lid, and the lid hit the gas lamp, and although this gas lamp doesn't have any flames exposed directly, it was still very hot, and so it started melting the plastic. And I remember throughout this time I was in sandals and I was getting bitten by bull ants, and so I was sort of perched up on this wooden park bench. And so not only is and this is all happening in a few split seconds, not only is this lid fallen over, knocked over the gas lamp, the lid is melting and the gas lamp is burning both the lid and the wooden table at the same time. And Les and I are just frantically trying to get it all back up and stabilised and get the lamp back up without burning our own hands, and trying not to set the table or the plastic alight. And oh my God, it was a disaster. And finally, at like 10:30 at night or something like that, a spaghetti was finally ready. And we were just so hungry by that point. We ate it and we were like, we're not doing the dishes tonight. We're leaving them for the morning. So, yeah, there was that disaster. And then when we woke up in the morning, it makes the cleaning up a bit worse because, all of the fats and stuff have all solidified, and, there was actually hot water at the camp, but only in the showers, right? So to save ourselves attempting to spend another hour or two trying to boil water in our puny little gas stove, which wasn't working properly, we thought, okay, let's try and use the hot water from the shower to wash up. So we looked like homeless people trying to wash up our dishes in the free hot water showers. And a few people did walk in on us and gave us strange looks and then went about their business. But, what a disaster it was. Yeah. There were a few other sort of disastrous moments on that trip, but I think that's the one that stands out the most. And I think I've talked about a few of the other ones on one of my other previous live streams talking about Urbex stories. So, yeah. Brian says, eating cold spaghetti from the tin, not fun. Well, this wasn't even from the tin. Like, we were trying to cook actual spaghetti, and that was what was the worst part. That is, if you don't forget the tin opener. I don't think we forgot a tin opener, but because this trip was so meticulously planned, yet because it was so meticulously planned, things went wrong. But I've talked about that more in a different video. K190 says, spaghetti, more like spagnotti. Yes. And Vanderbricks, yes, it was certainly an experience. So, a disastrous, but hugely successful in many other ways, 2018 trip, memories of a lifetime, and, while you certainly remember the times when things go wrong, it always turns out to be a good memory in the end, even if it wasn't the most enjoyable experience at the time. And, replanning on the run and all that. So we've just gone over the hour mark, it seems. So I think I'll finish off with one last story, which was a fairly recent story. I posted about this to Instagram. So a lot of you've, and I think Facebook as well. So if you've followed me and you've read this story, you've heard it before. But for those who haven't, I'll repeat it. So this happened in early March, I think, or late February. Might have been late February. I think it was actually late February. Anyway, so it all sort of started when I figured out that I needed an updated document for my work. And I can't remember what document it was. It was either insurance or registration or something like that. Because I work a bit as an Uber Eats driver, and so whatever document it was, they required. Oh no, that's right. It was a police check. That's right. So I had to get a police check, like a background check for Uber Eats, and they require a new one every year. And although I knew it would come back free, so it expired and I thought, oh yeah, that's all right, I'll just get a new one. So when I was creating the application, one of the required things to input was what's the reason for getting this application, like where do you work? So I also do a bit of work for NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and I know they had required me to do a police check when I first joined up with them. They hadn't asked me for a renewed one, but I thought, oh well, I might as well get it. If I'm getting it for Uber Eats, I can just pass it on to NDIS, and that should be fine if they need it. And so I put down, NDIS/Uber Eats. Thought, no worries. Submitted the application. I soon got an email back the next day saying, sorry, but you can't say both NDIS and Uber Eats. You've got to pick one or the other, or you can just say employment within all areas. So I thought, okay, strange bit of bureaucracy, but fine, I'll update the application and employment within all areas. Sounds good. So submitted that. Police check came back through, all clear, great. Tried to submit it in the Uber app or whatever, didn't want to let me. I tried to figure out why, couldn't. So eventually I got to the, trouble submitting a document section and submitted it. And eventually Uber Eats got back to me and said, the reason why we can't accept it is because we only accept background checks from National Crime Checks directly, which is the company that I got the check with. I said, we'll only accept it from them directly, just so that we know it's not faked or anything. So if it hasn't been submitted, email them and see what's up. So that's what I did. I emailed them and they said, oh, sorry, we can only submit the check to Uber Eats if you've specifically said Uber Eats on your application. And I'm sort of thinking, I'm not too happy. This application has just cost me $50 and you're telling me to just, spend another $50 to get another check done. That's not very nice. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to spend more time arguing with these people about, you should have put Uber Eats on there, or employment with all areas, blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to get back to work. So begrudgingly paid for another one, this time putting down Uber Eats as my reason. However, they said that the checks take anywhere between 24 and 48 hours to come through. So I knew I had some spare time on my hands. And I was itching to get away a bit. And I was like, okay, where can I go that's, relatively close by? I just want to get into the country somewhere. I don't really care if I stay overnight or what. I just want to go to the country for a day or so. And so I started looking at places I could go. I thought, maybe I'll take a V-line, maybe to Swan Hill. That could be interesting. But then going there on the first train there and coming back on the last train back, I would only have like 1 or 2 hours in Swan Hill. So I was like, could do that, but I'd kind of like a bit more time at my destination. So looking up potential destinations and weather, I wanted good weather as well. So I was looking up that as well and going, I'm meant to be going back to Port Welshpool. Nah, that's not good weather down there. And eventually I came across Rubicon. Thought, Rubicon's got good weather. It's not too far away. Looks good. I thought, great. I'll pack the car. Don't need to take too much. And I'll cook myself a curry over the fire, something like that, for dinner. And I'll just camp overnight. Just by myself. I'll ring up a couple others, see if they want to come, but not expecting them to say yes. This was literally with like a day's notice or less than a day's notice. Made a couple calls to friends. No one else would come, so fine. Been camping on my own plenty of times. So I went to Rubicon, but I ended up leaving later than I initially anticipated. So my original plan was to have lunch in Alexandra, which is the nearest sort of town, and buy ingredients for dinner while I was in Alexandra. Because I left late, I ended up having lunch in Lilydale, and although I definitely could have bought ingredients in Lilydale, it just didn't cross my mind to buy the ingredients, so that'll come into play later. So got to Rubicon, had a look around different campsites, drove back and forth. Okay, found a decent one. It's, a bit separated from the rest of the crowd. Pulled up, took a couple of basic things out of my car, and I was going to film a video of it, but I was fiddling around with my camera and what I thought was my microphone misbehaving. Turns out it was actually my camera misbehaving. Things weren't quite right, so I couldn't film. And I was like, okay. So I'm just fiddling around, and then I see this guy coming along, trundling along in his van, and as you do, just, friendly wave to say hi, and he had his window down and he waved back, and then he saw that I had a camera and he stopped his van. He's like, oh, that's a nice camera you've got. What type is it? And, I get that question fairly often. So it's like, oh, yeah, it's a Sony, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I used to do aerial photography with old, huge film cameras. I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting, and blah, blah, blah. We got chatting. Eventually he said, oh, do you have a map of the area? I said, no, I don't, but I know my way around enough to get to a few places. And he said, oh, well, there's a few interesting spots around here. Here, take my map. I'm camping just up the road, and just return the map to me later in the evening. So I said, yeah, that sounds great. And he asked for my contact details, and I gave them to him because by that point I'd sort of said, oh, I do YouTube, that's why I've got the camera, etc. And he thought that was cool, and he's like, oh, when you drop off the map, do you want to join me for a cup of tea? I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to join you. And one of the things he said was to go look at this bridge, which was under construction up the road a bit. So that's one of the things that I did. I went up to the bridge to have a look at what was going on, and I'd sort of dropped the map off to him on my way there. And this guy was making cups of tea, and while I was at the bridge, I remembered, hang on a minute, I've forgotten to buy ingredients for dinner. I check the time and I go, okay, it's still relatively early. If I leave Rubicon now and drive into Alexandra, I'll be able to get stuff before the shops close, and then I'll come back. But I'm going to have to miss out, or at least postpone the tea with this guy. So drove back to where I was camping. He had his own sort of little isolated spot, and I said to him, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to pass on the tea now because I need to go get stuff for dinner. And he said, are you planning on cooking? I said, curry. He said, I've got a couple ingredients. Look, how about you have dinner with me and you use my ingredients, you cook us a meal, and yeah, how about that? I said, I'll gladly accept your offer. So it was a very nice offer. Thought, yeah, cool. Have tea with this guy as well. Chat to him a bit further, from the brief conversation I had before. Seems like an interesting guy. And yeah, we got chatting, and the more we chatted, the more we found that we sort of had in common, I guess. The guy was once a sailor himself, although he's sailed square-rigged ships, like big, tall ships around the world. And he said he was even an extra in a movie one time as a sailor, because he was one of the permanent crew on board this ship. So, yeah, that was quite cool. Speaking to him, I cooked up a pretty nice dinner, I should say, given what ingredients I had between us. He didn't have any sort of meat, at least not, it wasn't in a can. He had some chunky steak in a can type thing. But I was like, I think I can make something a bit better than that. And I think I ended up, I fried up some onion and curry paste, some Thai curry paste that I had made, and I then put in a couple of cans of tomatoes from him. I think I ended up adding a can of minestrone, and then we put on some rice that I had a bit of combination of what I had and what he had. And yeah, it all turned out, the dinner turned out, it was quite good. And yeah, just the more we talked, the more interest we had in common. He'd worked all kinds of jobs. Turns out he was homeless and jobless at the moment, at that time, but homeless by choice, jobless because he said he fell on his axe. His axe was in the wood, and he sort of fell on the handle and injured his rib cage, and so that put him out of work basically. But yeah, he'd worked all kinds of different jobs, very little formal training, but just a guy who's willing to give anything a go, and he just seemed like he said that he would get sick of some jobs and after a certain amount of time, and so he'd move on to something else. But as a result, he's lived quite an interesting life. And just in terms of camping, at one point he recognised that I was checking out his brand new chainsaw, and I sort of said, I've got a chainsaw as well. And he said, this was if you know chainsaws, this was a steel MS261C, I think. Anyway, it's a pretty new chainsaw. He said it cost him, a couple grand, professional level chainsaw, and that he'd done a bit of forestry work in the past, and he said, have you ever worked with a professional chainsaw before? I said, no. He said, well, pick it up and fire it up and see how you like it. So I thought, this sounds all right. Started pulling it, and then he's like, okay, stop. And he taught me the proper procedure to start it safely and the reasons why. And he's sort of one of those guys who you don't expect to be big on the safety aspect, I guess, but he was. And good on him for it, because chainsaws can do a lot of damage if you don't treat them properly. And eventually he told me a few stories of times that friends or family members either were injured or were very nearly injured by a chainsaw, or even himself, So he said, he's seen it all, and that's the reason why he's, an advocate for safety. But we even found a bit of wood, chopped it up with the chainsaw, and my God, it was about twice as fast as mine at cutting up even though they're both, I've got a Ryobi chainsaw, and although they're pretty similar sizes, the steel one, as you'd expect, being a professional chainsaw and costing like 2-3 times as much or more, it worked a lot better. And he had some axes and stuff, and taught me sort of the proper best way to split wood. Then I got my axe out because I'd bought it, and sort of, split wood, and, talked about axes and, different theories of modern, sort of, my one is a Fisker's axe, so it's sort of a more modern design versus the more traditional design. And we chatted into the night. He was very happy that I was splitting up all of his wood to throw in the fire. And the next day I helped him out again by he had a loose fan belt, I believe, on his van, and while we didn't have the tools to fix it, I pointed him in the right direction. And at one point he said, look, my van actually isn't registered, so I'd like to go into town to get some resupplies. If I gave you a bit of petrol money and shouted you some lunch in town, would you drive me into town? And I said, yeah, sure, that sounds right. So he said, how much petrol money do you want? And I said, I don't know, $10. He said, deal. And so that's what we did. We drove into town. He gave me $10 petrol money and shouted me a pie for lunch from the bakery in Thornton. And yeah, quite successful. Got some resupplies. And then on the way back, we even passed a police car. So he was very happy because he said, look, mate, this trip has cost me, $15? And it could have easily cost me $800 with a fine for driving an unregistered vehicle. So he was happy, I was happy, win-win. And we eventually exchanged phone numbers. Throughout this whole story, I haven't mentioned that this guy was named Phil. He introduced himself as Phil from the Hill. I've got his number. I haven't contacted him since. He said that he was going to contact me when he got his phone back, and he didn't quite know when that was. But yeah, I'm sure I'll get in contact with him again at some stage. But yeah, he was a great guy, and yeah, not your typical everyday person. And so, yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool experience meeting that guy. And I could have easily sort of declined the offer of tea and all of that, and sort of gone like, this guy, stranger danger, that sort of thing. While I certainly am aware of stranger danger, if you want to call it that, I'm less, I guess I'm less defensive or less cautious, I guess, than most people. Because, yeah, I feel like that sort of experience wouldn't happen to most people. Because they would be overly cautious. There's nothing wrong with a bit of caution, but I think some people can be overly cautious sometimes, and they miss out on meeting what could be some pretty interesting people. So, yeah, I don't know, that's just something. I've met plenty of interesting people that I just happened to talk to whenever I was in a particular area. So, yeah, it's just something. I guess the last thing I'll add to that story is that when I posted it on Instagram, that was the first time where my extended family had really found out about it, and I didn't think too much of it, but the next time I saw them, they're like, oh my God, Floyd, you could have been killed. What were you doing talking to that guy? He had a chainsaw. You're insane. And not in a, they weren't saying that in a way to like put me off. They were just sort of saying it in a way of, oh my God, I'd never do it. I can't believe you did it. But if you want to do it, that's fine. That's on you. Yeah, but that was a good, and I don't know, the people you meet, hey, you can be interesting. So, looking at the chat, a while ago, James said, greetings from Arkansas, USA. G'day, James. Albert said, "You got to run, Floyd. I'll finish watching this later, non-live." Fair enough. Same with James. So James disappeared as well. Vanderbrick says, "Bit crap, isn't it?" I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to because I didn't see it in context. G'day MRTV. MRTV, whatever you call it. I think you were referring to the can of chunky steak. Yeah, it is a bit crap, isn't it? And Floyd turned out to be quite the chef. Well, yeah, I cook twice a week at home. Curry is a favourite of mine, so I can throw a few things together, and I know I've grown up tasting great food, and my dad always used to love to cook before he passed away, and mum as well. But yeah, especially in the year or so since Dad has passed away, I've cooked twice a week. But yeah, so I can taste stuff like that. Okay, Daniel. Go with your instincts, says Brian. Yeah, to an extent. And my instinct said, this guy's fine. You know, he's not your typical person, but he's a cool guy. And Michael says, I think your kindness made a difference in his life. No, it's okay. You went to Texas. Yes. Yes, no Texas chainsaw business going on there. But I guess, Michael, you're the same. You're a very nice person yourself, and you know, I think you and I were mostly strangers before we met through Facebook, so there you go. And, you know, with the age gap between us especially, just another example of nice people you can meet if you are nice yourself, I guess. Yeah, Michael's a good friend. Was talking about the background check thing. Oh, okay. Having to pay more. Yeah, it was shit. Yeah, let me get up the photo of that camp, because that I can find that with relative ease. Just collapse a few things. Okay. So this is of the bridge rebuilding. I obviously haven't edited these photos, so some of them are a bit dark or something. You can see the bridge would normally go across here, but it's being rebuilt. Yeah, there's just a small little workers' bridge at the moment. Or at least that's what it was like in February, was it? Yeah, 2nd of Feb, 2021. More bridge building. Oh yes, and this was a fairly humble but decent camp set up by this guy. You know, he's got some solar panels, he's got some batteries for lights, and that's my only edited photo from the trip. He's got a van, plays some music in his van, got some tapes and stuff. Fairly old van, you know, but yeah, it's camping, and he cleaned up the campsite. That's actually what he was doing when I first saw him. He was busy cleaning up the campsites. So, yeah, good guy. You can sort of see the, if I sort of increase the exposure there, that's better. You can see he's got, I believe he slept in that tent, and that one he stored all his gear in, although he was in the middle of sorting it all out. That's why all that stuff is out there. And that was my car. I had a spare tyre on. And I've had to replace another 2 tyres since that one, but that's a story for another time, through punctures and whatnot. Yeah, that's the end of that. So, yeah, just nice guy, interesting guy, and I believe last time he was looking at getting some work in Alexandra. So, yeah, getting himself established a bit in Alexandra. Yeah, but he was just sort of in the bush to heal. So, good on him, and very nice little campsite, nice secluded. And as I said, hope to catch up with him again one day. Brian says, every friend was a stranger before becoming a friend. Exactly. And thank you from Michael. You're welcome. Yes. Anyway, what have we got now? An hour and a half. Definitely time to wrap it up. Well, yeah, I hope you enjoyed tonight's stream. We had, I think we've got 11 of us watching at the moment. Or, I mean, it jumps around, but I think there was up to 14 people at once watching the stream tonight. So that's pretty good considering it's the first one back. So that's good. Glad to see everyone, familiar names again. Camping Stories Part 2 one day, says Vanderbricks. Yeah, we could do that. Maybe if I don't think I have another decent topic next week, we could do Camping Stories Part 2 in a fortnight. Yeah, just as a final wrap-up, if you would have, a lot of you would have watched my unexplained absence video where I talked about how my computer needed repairing, and that was why I couldn't produce videos. My computer still needs repairing, but I'm streaming on that same computer, which still needs repairing at the moment, but I've got a, shall we call it, temporary screen attached. If you remember back to that video how I said the broken screen worked but the good screen didn't, well, I've got the broken screen on at the moment and it's literally just held on with masking tape. It's not a permanent solution, but it works. It allows me to use my computer before I save up the another $1,000 or so it'll take to get it fixed properly. So, yeah. Leave us by telling us what the next adventure might be, says Mark. Well, I hope to get back to Rubicon. That's probably going to be my next adventure. And hope to maybe catch up with Phil from the Hill. So, yeah, don't know when that will be, but hopefully soon. Maybe in my inter-semester break. Could be something. So, yeah, the computer still needs fixing, but it's usable. Glad that everything worked well tonight and on the technical side of things. And I do have a video in the pipeline. It's again the Morwell Power Station video. It'll come out one day. No promises as to when. Uni times are busy times. So, yeah. What's wrong with it? Brian, short answer is a faulty GPU. I fixed the faulty GPU, but now the screen has troubles. Watch my last video, which explains it a bit more. But I will, when I finally do get it fixed 100%, I will talk about it in full and what I eventually end up doing to come to a final fixed working computer and how much it's going to cost me in the end once I sell off all the parts and blah, 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 blah. So, that's about it. I think that's all I had to say. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around, and hope to see you at least in 2 weeks' time. Yeah. Cheers. See you on the next one.